this series of videos about Bank on Yourself. This is FAQ number 5, what's required to get started. If you've been watching the last 4 videos with FAQs 1 through 4, you are familiar that this is a little bit different style than we typically do on the show, where we're doing more of a deep dive into a particular product. Let me know what you think of this style. And this video will conclude this series, but we can always come back to it if you want. Please let me know. Um, but you might be, as you're listening to these FAQs, like, aren't the fees and commissions too high? When can I access my cash? What are the downsides? Why would I pay interest on my own money? You might be thinking, okay, this all sounds well and good, but what's really required to get started? And that's what I want to talk about today. Welcome to the FIFE Movement. I'm your host, Amanda Neely. This is the only movement that helps our generation create our unique, feminine, and entrepreneurial path to financial independence. Please be sure to subscribe so you get future episodes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you got to hit that bell so that you get the notifications. Now, this question, what's required to get started, usually comes from people who they've heard about Bank on Yourself. They think it's a good idea, but their biggest thing is, I don't know if I have the money to do this kind of thing. A lot of people, when they think about financial professionals, they're thinking they need to have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of $1,000s in order to invest, or they need to be saving at a pretty big rate or investing at a pretty big rate in order to work with them. And, a lot of the examples that you might come across in the internet or on books have pretty large premiums going in and seem to be kind of out of reach. How much can you really do? And there's some basic rules of thumb here, but the most important thing for you to know is that there's no required upfront, like, lump sum. 100% no. Even my first policy, I started with a regular monthly premium, nothing at the beginning, like in terms of a larger amount up front. That's not required to do a Bank on Yourself type policy or to work with a Bank on Yourself professional. You really can start where you're at. And then in terms of what is that monthly premium, the biggest thing to consider is, are you living within your means currently? If you every month are going further into debt, that's like the number one thing that you'd want to kind of turn around before you start thinking about using something like Bank on Yourself to better your financial future. You want to stop getting out of debt, right? Or like stop going into further debt, at least get to where you're even, Steven. Now, you might also think you need to get totally out of debt before starting, and that's not true. I still had business debt, student loan debt that I was paying when I started. And actually, that was a big thing I did as part of that initial premium, was that of paying extra on my debt, I put it into a policy first, and then later used the policy to pay off my debt rather than paying extra on my debt. And that works super well for me. It could be what works for you if you're paying extra on your debt. Something that other people look at is if they're currently saving or investing, more like investing into a 401k or IRA. Maybe they're using a brokerage account. Some people want to redirect some of those funds. Or even if every year you get a big tax return, you could use that tax return, or you could just adjust your withholding and use what was, being held by the Internal Revenue Service until April each year, right? You could use that to help fund a policy for you, get that protection for your family, get your money growing for your benefit rather than for the Internal Revenue Service's benefit. As you can start to see, the possibilities really become quite endless in terms of how you can shift things around to free up money to get started rather than feel like you need to cut back on, the latte each morning, which never do. No, just kidding. Up to you, right? Or that you have to, pick up a side job or do different things. There are a lot of ways to make a policy work. And even the common guidelines that we have, we've been having fun with using them really as guidelines and not strict rules, because it's what they're meant to be, as guidelines. So if anything, I would say as long as you're not going further into debt each month, you're spending more than what you bring in, or, you've got some kind of stability there, then that's what's really required to get started. Um, and even in the rare exception, we've even started with people who are in that place where they're still figuring out the stability side, right? Maybe they've got variable income. We can still work on that, right? So some months they go into debt if their income's not where it needs to be. And actually, starting a policy has brought them the stability they needed because they've gotten better, and clearer on their finances. So, long-winded way to say what's required to get started? Just don't be going into debt every month, right? More and more debt. At least to be at the place where you're even Steven, even if you're living paycheck to paycheck, at least you're not going further into debt. That's really what I would say is required. And maybe not even that's required. Okay, that was a long winded way to tell you what's required to get started with the bank and yourself policy, at least from my perspective. If you have a bank on yourself policy or you're familiar with how these work, that's these type of life insurance policies, please share in the comments what you think would be required to get started. I'd love to hear from you. And for now, thanks for joining me and connecting with the FIFE movement. I promise we're going to start going back into more storytelling and general things in the future. We're getting close to the holidays and the end of the year here. I've got some special things coming up in the next few episodes. For now, as you go about your day today, remember wealth is coming your way. Your quest is to prepare for using it well. For more tips on how to prepare, be sure to subscribe. And to connect with the community, visit fifemovement.com. If my gift has helped you today, please pay the gift forward by sharing this content with a friend. My gratitude in advance.